These were even outside of those marriages, so of course the show had to come back.
This time it was bigger than ever. Throughout this period, AlJazeera was planning a satirical venture not for print, for broadcast.
As my old friend Frankie used to say, start spreading the news.
He created a political puppet show called The News. AlJazeera teamed up with a French producer, Thierry Cassuto, who moved to South Africa in 1998, 4 years into majority rule, and saw a satirical opportunity staring back at him.
I looked at the political field, the landscape, and I thought, wow, this is like a chessboard with so many different, very colorful characters. Having a quasi-saint like Nelson Mandela on the one hand, on the other hand, having a quasi-neo-Nazi like Eugene Terreblanche, and everything else in the middle.
The News was commissioned by the SABC, the country state broadcaster. But when the SABC demanded editorial control, the deal fell apart.
There are certain tests that are best done behind closed doors.
Every broadcaster has got editorial policies that they have got to adhere to. You've got to make sure that whatever product you put on air adheres to your editorial policies. That is the editorial control we wanted. The producers wanted to project it as a political issue. Government is influencing it. But if that was the case, the other broadcasters in the country, they also rejected it. Therefore, what does that say?
None of the mainstream broadcasters were ready for our show. I think the people of South Africa are ready for ZA News, but the broadcasters were not ready. Our YouTube channel is the #1 YouTube channel in the country. Our fan page on Facebook is one of the biggest in the country as well.
17 years after the end of apartheid, race remains the defining social issue in South Africa, and that is reflected in the country's media, especially when two white men lampoon politicians who are predominantly black.
A lot of people have strong opinions about white people being the purveyors of news, the creators of information, the creators of stories about African people, and I think a lot of us have had enough of that.
Whether or not the composition of the team that produces the news has influenced whether, you know, the fact that we're not on TV is not certain, because in fact it's a very mixed group producing this show. I think it's more about the strength of our criticism and the fact that we don't want to be editorially controlled.
Jonathan Shapiro doesn't want to be anybody's puppet, which is why for now, his colourful cast of political caricatures is spreading ZA News online.
More Global Village Voices now on satire and how it plays in South African media.
I think satire is hugely important in South African media. We're a country that jokes a lot, we laugh a lot, we like drama. It's one of the ways that we communicate. If the media is going to be relevant, I think satire is massively important. South Africans understand it, South Africans get it. We understand complex humour and we make use of it all the time.
Satire doesn't play as much of an important role as we'd like to think it does. It certainly doesn't play the same role and function as it did in the late 1980s, for example, during the dying days of apartheid. It doesn't have that intensity and focus. I think ZaPiro is great. My only concern is that there's only ZaPiro at the moment. There isn't that broad range of cartoonists and caricatures that we'd like to actually see, and that is a concern going into the future.
Finally, a couple of weeks back, we reported on the $315 million sale of Arianna Huffington's news website, the Huffington Post, to AOL. That's a lot of money, especially considering that the bulk of the Huffington Post's traffic goes there for aggregated material. That's content from other news websites that the Huffington Post simply directs its readers to. Judging from our web video of the week, the online political cartoonist Mark Fiore thinks Ms. Huffington's financial windfall is a pretty good return for a mere aggregator. We'll see you next time at the Listening Post.
Multi-millionaire media maven Arianna's Huffington Post is now a cool $315 million richer.
Fabulous, darling.
This journalista's jackpot is all thanks to the advent of aggregation. Or, look, here's some stuff I found on the web. Why pay for journalists to work when the work of journalists can pay you? If only they would have thought of this sooner.
Ernie Pyle here, reporting from my study. where I just discovered some neat links on the war and did a bang-up job of search engine optimization.
Extra, extra. Give us your work for free and we'll make millions. Blog all about it.
Agricopolis was a success, as aggregation was the new key to big bucks. Merger upon merger and links upon links until new aggregators began to aggregate aggregators. Website A used content from Site B in exchange for B getting eyeballs from A. Soon B realized it could do the same thing and gathered from Site C. But C was no dummy, and soon A through Z all did the same thing, until one day little Tommy was at school researching a report on journalism and democracy. Tommy turned to the web, clicked, and found an aggregate of links linking to nothing but aggregators' links of each other's aggregated links. Good night, little Tommy, and good link.
As protests, violence, and the call for political reform spreads across the Arab world, Al Jazeera's in-depth coverage of events on the ground brings you the news as it breaks. Ongoing coverage of the Libya uprising on Al Jazeera.
East Timor's government has declared it's time for foreign forces to leave the country. But with a frail infrastructure, is this nation prepared to face a future without international support? 101 East, at this time on Al Jazeera.
Two generations face the past in order to understand the present. A young man embarks on a journey with his father in search of answers. Great changes in China have brought their traditional family way of life to a crisis point. Faces of China, at this time on Al Jazeera.
As geeks take on dictators, bloggers turn dissidents, and social networks root for social justice, governments are going cyber, spying on their citizens, erecting firewalls like Iron Curtains, and closing down websites. We ask, is cyber-generated change virtual or real? Empire at this time on Al Jazeera.
It is in the details. A look. A connection. The moments that reveal the truth. Award-winning documentaries from critically acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes. At this time on Al Jazeera.
This is Al Jazeera.
Hello, warm welcome to this News Hour live from Doha with me, David Foster, and from Al Jazeera's news centres here and in London, our continuing coverage of the uprising in Libya. Bracing now for a Gaddafi counterattack, anti-government forces get ready to defend the city of AlJazeera, just 50 kilometres from the capital. Libya's former justice minister announces the formation of a national council and warns against foreign intervention.
I'm Lauren Taylor in London with the latest from Europe, including UK Special Forces take part in the rescue of 150 British oil workers from a landing strip deep in the Libyan desert. And breaking news from Tunisia. The Prime Minister has just resigned on state television. We'll bring you that in just a few minutes. Hello there. The latest reports coming out of western Libya now say that anti-government forces are getting ready for a counter-offensive by those troops who are still loyal to Muammar Gaddafi. It would be in the city of AlJazeera, just 50 kilometres west of the capital, Tripoli. And according to witnesses, the city is now surrounded by pro-Gaddafi forces. Well, 200,000 people live there, and it's in the hands of the rebels at the moment. These are the latest pictures out of AlJazeera. said to show tanks seized by anti-Gaddafi fighters. Now, those on the tanks apparently have also mounted heavy machine guns on the back of pickup trucks. And we've seen pictures of celebrations in AlJazeera, including people chanting in the city centre. And from the roofs of buildings. Now, this is in Libya's third largest city, Misrata, also reportedly in opposition hands. Some people we've spoken to there say that tanks are moving towards this western city. And across in New York, on the diplomatic front, the UN Security Council unanimously backing sanctions against Gaddafi and his inner circle. Add to that an arms embargo. Ahmed Shabani, we spoke to him, a Canadian-Libyan businessman who was recently evacuated from Tripoli to Dubai, and his family still in AlJazeera. I asked him what he'd heard from them.
I talked to them yesterday, and they said that they were surrounded by tanks, and it's most likely going to go down tonight, a big firefight. There's going to be a big battle between the people and the government coming at them with tanks.
What would the people there have to resist with?
They did take some weaponry from the police and from an army warehouse that was nearby. So they do have some arms, but they don't have the arms that the Gaddafi loyalists do. The Gaddafi loyalists are using the most extreme weapons that are available to them that they've acquired over the past many number of years. So it's going to be a tough battle. I just hope and pray to God that that Zawiya prevails, and Zawiya has a very big will, and I think they might prevail, but I'm very worried and scared. My family is in Zawiya, so it's very difficult.
And yet, with the reports of more cities falling, the ring around Gaddafi does seem to be tightening. Al Jazeera's Lawrence Lee looks at the embattled leader's options from here on in.
So what next for Gaddafi? Assuming he will not go voluntarily, his next moves must surely be predicated on where he believes he still has support and to what extent he can block his opponents from marching against him. A look at Western Libya presents problems for both the opposition fighters and for Gaddafi. The coastal road from the east is blocked at Sirte, Gaddafi's hometown, which he still controls. It's not a big place, but the roads either side of it are said to be controlled by armed forces.